Welcome back to the Garden Girls podcast. If you're new here, our names are Dagny, Meg, and Amy. And today, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, actually. And I think it's one that we've all evolved into talking about more and more over the summer since our first collab video about tea gardens, which went really well. We all had a great time talking about it and got a really good response from talking about it. But today, we're going to be talking about garden potions, which is going to be all sorts of different potions that we like to make, like teas, drinks, herbal remedies, natural skincare. So we picked a few of our favorite recipes to share with you and talk about some of the plants that we grow to make those recipes. We're also going to tell you our favorite plants to grow for a tea garden. Meg, do you want to start us off?
First of all, I love that we call them potions. I like to call it potions because it just makes it seem more fun. It makes it seem more mystical, like we're little cottage like witches or fairies and we're just out there making potions. And one of my favorite things to make that really makes it truly feel like a potion, like you're in a Disney movie and you're mixing up a little something, is butterfly pea tea. So you make this using the butterfly pea flowers. They're a really tropical flower. I think they're found in Asia. They are this brilliant blue, purple. I don't even know how to describe the color because it's so vibrant and it's so pretty. It is one of my favorite colors in the world. But when you make a tea out of it and you mix it with an acid like lemon juice, it magically turns color. So it'll turn color from that really vibrant blue purple color to this glittery looking pink magenta color. It's just so fun. And I highly recommend if you have kids and you want to make them feel magical, or if you don't have kids and you just want to feel magical yourself, I think you should try to grow butterfly pea.
You can actually also do this with hibiscus, which I did not realize until recently, but it is so magical. And you're right. It's like this violet, it's almost like neon, like how vibrant it is. It's so pretty.
It's very dark and jewel toned. Like it looks royal. It just looks magical. I don't know how else to describe it.
What does it taste like though?
It tastes very neutral. It tends to adapt to every flavor that you mix it with. But one of my favorite things to do is make cocktails with it. I like to have friends over and I'll just wow them with a color changing cocktail and it's just really fun. So I'll make a gin and tonic with it or a margarita. You can just really mix it with anything. It tastes a little earthy, I think, just very slightly, but overall just very neutral.
How do you actually grow it? Because I've heard it's hard to grow and that's why I haven't tried to do it myself.
So it is a tropical plant. So it does like warm environments and it does need a pretty long growing season to grow. I don't know if you guys could grow it in your environment. Maybe if you start it in your greenhouse, because you both have greenhouses. Like I'll notice even in my climate, I have a longer growing season. But when I plant it out, it doesn't usually start flowering until late summer, early fall. It takes a long time to get going. So yeah, just go ahead and start it early.
It looks like you can grow it in zones 10 through 12, but 9 can work, or you can grow it as an annual in containers in lower zones.
Well, see, that's weird because I'm in zone 8A and I can grow it by just, planting it out early spring and it has time to mature. I don't know if it's maybe the variety. There's a blue butterfly pea and then there's a purple variety. I don't know if maybe there's different. I just know that we have a pretty long growing season from like April to November, 8 months of growing. And it tends to do fine here.
I would love to attend a Meg's cocktail party. Just putting that out there. I have tried butterfly pea quite a few times because I go on holiday to Thailand. I've been there a few times and it just grows everywhere there. And they use it to color rice as well. So they make like really cute pinky purpley rice, which I love. Or it's like more of a bluey purple color.
That sounds so cool. And I would love to have you at one of my cocktail parties. Another interesting thing about this flower is that its scientific name is Clitoria. And it's often said that the scientists that discovered it had a really hard time finding it.
That does not surprise me one bit. Sorry, were they men by any chance?
Yeah, it was a man. 100%.
Starting us off strong, Meg. Okay, you got another one for us?
Yeah, so another one of my favorite things to make. Everyone's always asking me about my hair. Love to put oil in my hair. I feel like it just makes it shinier, it keeps it thick, and it keeps it healthy. The concoction that I like to make is with rosemary. So I have a huge rosemary bush in my garden, 4 years old. It's huge. I love it so much. And I will infuse that in argan oil. Argan oil is really good for your hair. Rosemary has been studied to be really good for your hair, and it can actually stimulate hair growth. So argan oil and rosemary together are like a match made in heaven. And what I'll do is I'll dry out the rosemary, I'll harvest it, take it in, dry it out, and then I will infuse it in argan oil for about 6 weeks. And then after that 6 weeks, I'll strain the rosemary out, and then I'll have a rosemary infused argan oil. I like to take that, I'll put it in my scalp, I'll massage my scalp with it like once every couple of days or something. I even put some of it in a spray bottle, so it's like a spray kind of oil, and I'll spray it on the rest of my hair, and it just feels like it makes it really shiny.
Question, does it make you smell like roast potatoes though?
I don't think so. It just makes you smell like rosemary, but I also wouldn't mind smelling like a roasted
It
potato.
would just make me hungry.
No.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
know. I'd be like, why do I want to eat you right now?
Right? That's just another benefit.
I remember when rosemary oil blew up on TikTok and stuff, everyone was going on about it. And then there was like this one that people were buying that was too concentrated, I think, and they weren't diluting it. That made me scared of making my own rosemary oil. But I'm assuming if you make it yourself, it's not going to be like crazy strong, is it?
Do you know if they were using essential oil or were they actually infusing it with rosemary? Because if you're using essential oils and stuff, it's really easy to overdo it.
I think they were using like a pre-made one. Like they weren't making it themselves. It was one that you're supposed to use for your hair, but you have to dilute it or something. But
if you don't know the exact ingredients and the method that they use to infuse the oil, then you don't really know the concentration. But when you're just infusing it yourself, I don't think there's any way that you could OD on the rosemary. But again, if something is using essential oil, it's really easy to overdo it on essential oils. This is just a simple infusion. I don't think that you're getting a huge concentration this way.
that makes sense.
But yeah, I think it's perfectly safe. The next thing that I love to make is calendula salve. I've made calendula salve probably 10 years of my life. The first time I ever made it, I was like, wow, this is so good. I used it on everything. I used it on burns, skin, scrape, anything. So I call it my all-purpose cream, because my grandmother, she was one of those sellers for some kind of cream like back in the day, and they called it all-purpose cream, and it was a different kind of cream that you were supposed to be able to use for everything. So that's how I adopted that name, but I call it my all-purpose cream. It's the same with the rosemary. You're making an oil infusion, but with the calendula salve, I like to infuse the calendula in sweet almond oil or jojoba oil. I prefer jojoba oil because I love how jojoba oil is just very like thin on your skin. It's not super thick. It's non-comedogenic, meaning it doesn't clog your pores like coconut oil or something can. So it's just like one of those really light, great oils to use. You can do a calendula salve with nothing else. You can just infuse oil, add beeswax, and then call it a salve. But I like to add some other oils. I like hemp oil, and I like neem oil as well. Then I'll usually add some essential oils, just a few drops of, I like to use steam distilled orange oil. And a lot of people are put off by orange oil because it can make your skin more phototoxic, meaning like it can sunburn your skin if you put orange oil on. But if you use steam distilled orange oil instead of cold pressed orange oil, steam distilled orange oil is not phototoxic, so it doesn't increase your risk of like sunburn or anything. So that makes the calendula salve safe to use on your lips or your skin when you're out in the sun.
Wish I knew that because I have been putting orange oil in face oil for a year now and I haven't gotten a sunburn, but I guess that would have been good information to have for sure.
Look at the bottle. If it's cold pressed, it's phototoxic. And it's not, if you use it in small amounts, it's not going to give you a sunburn. It might, but it's just never good to put something like phototoxic in something that you're putting on your skin and you're out in the sun.
Because I love the smell. I did one that was just like sunflower oil and then a couple drops of lavender essential oil and a couple drops of orange essential oil. And I've been using that on my face.
I bet that smells amazing though.
It does. Yeah. And that's what I love about it. It's a good combo.
It's the best combo. You can even add lavender into the calendula salve too. The best thing about salves is you can play around with them. You can make your own formulations. I've played around with my specific formula for the last 10 years, and I feel like I've truly perfected it. So yeah, I use it on everything.
How do we get on this PR list? Just asking for a
I
friend.
know,
would
right?
love that.
You guys are on the list. For sure, I'll send you some. I'm about to make a batch because I have harvested a bunch of calendula this spring. It's just like sitting there. I actually have 2 jars infusing right now. So just like with the rosemary, it has to infuse for 6 weeks. There's a shortcut you can do where you can heat the oil over low heat in a crock pot and speed up the infusion process, but I personally don't like to do that. I like to just let nature do its thing. Those are my favorite potions that I like to make. What about you, Amy?
I'm going to be honest. I really haven't dabbled that much in making garden potions yet. I have focused a lot more on the food and things I can eat, but I've done like teas and stuff. And I do have a garden that's just full of plants that would be perfect for making potions with. So I'm going to be asking a lot more questions from both of you for all of your recommendations. But a couple of like really simple things I've done is chamomile flowers are like amazing for your skin. I will brew up a big jug of chamomile tea with the flowers in it and then dump the whole thing into my bath water with the flowers. You can remove them if you want to, and then just bathe in a little soft, flowery bath. It's just really nice and soothing and relaxing for your skin.
That sounds so amazing. I need that in my life.
That sounds like the most calming bath ever. I think all of us could use one of those baths right now.
I've also done that with lavender, but I keep it like in a little cloth sachet in the water so that like you're in like a giant cup of tea, basically.
That sounds nice.
But
I
it
need
doesn't
to
make
do
a
that.
huge mess.
We can mix them together.
Yes.
Why
Yes.
not?
I love having flowers floating in the bath because it just makes you feel magical.
Disney princess.
A Disney princess, yeah, just bathing in flowers. Why
So
not?
romantic. It's like the epitome of self-care. Like I put flowers in my bath.
Exactly.
That's all it takes. That's self-care right
Exactly.
there.
And aside from teas, I also just spotted, I wasn't going to talk about this, but I have some Meadow Sweet flowers hanging next to my window. It's not a potion at all. They just smell amazing. I just picked them, hung up a bunch of them and left them to dry like that. And every time there's like a breeze flowing through them, they just fill the room with an amazing smell. And I think there was like a queen who, I can't remember which queen it was, but she used to always have Meadow Sweet hanging in her bed chambers because she loved the smell of it. And I highly recommend picking some because it smells so good.
Don't know. Do
I
we
know.
have Meadow
I'm
Sweet
looking-
here? I'm
I'm
looking.
looking it up. I'm looking it up too because I have no idea what it looks or smells
Oh,
like.
it's Spirea.
This is saying mead wort?
Yeah, I think that's the
Meadwort?
one. The name of it actually comes from it used to flavor meads rather than like actually meaning meadow, although that is where it grows too. So it's
Cool.
confusing.
I have beef with whoever decided to name certain flowers after wort. It just makes them
Mhm.
seem not flowery at all. It makes them seem a toad. I don't know.
Anything that has the word wart at the end of it means like the flower or the plant is like really useful for something.
Oh, I had no
Oh.
idea.
I did not know that either.
And then I learned the other day that if something has the word dog in it, so like dog rose, it means like there's a better version of it. So that one is only
What?
good for the dog.
Subpar.
Mhm.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, our state flower, I think, in North Carolina is the dogwood flower. So that means
Those
that,
are like my favorite flowering trees.
yeah, that means that there's one just better. That's
I
just
guess
for the
so.
dog.
It's just not good.
I don't like that dogwood slander.
I
Okay, I
know.
love dogwoods.
Also, why don't our dogs deserve better?
Exactly. That's what I thought.
Really?
The poor dogs.
Yeah,
I
why are we getting
know.
the second-rate plants?
I know you guys enjoyed this video, or at least Dagny, I remember you telling me about it. The Cleavers tea infusion.
Yes.
Cold infusion that I made. I love this because Cleavers are just everywhere and you can literally just pick some, chuck them in a bottle in your fridge and leave it overnight. Cleavers are also known as sticky weed and they have loads of other names. You probably have them growing in your garden. But yeah, they're amazing. They taste cucumber, so I mix it with mint. It's just like a really nice, refreshing tea basically. And it's great for your skin and for your immune system. The saying is if you drink it for 60 days, everyone will fall in love with you and you'll be like the most beautiful person ever. And I think that's because of how good it is for your skin.
That explains your success. I knew it. I knew it all along.
I only drank it like 10 times, so
That's all it took for you.
I didn't need 60 days.
She's just been drinking sticky weed this whole time. We didn't know.
Explains it.
Yeah, that
Explains everything.
explains it.
It is so refreshing. This is why I love following you guys, because I had that growing all over my yard and I had no clue what it was or that it was edible and it tastes so good. It's so refreshing, especially on a hot summer day.
Amy introduced the both of us because I saw Amy's video too, and I was like, wait, that is growing. I did not know that was edible or that it was so delicious.
Yeah.
It's also called Sticky Willy, which I just think is a funny name.
Yeah, I love
That's
that.
what I call it. It's like you don't even have to pick those, just walk through it. They'll stick to you.
It's just such a low effort plant that like everyone has, and it makes me happy that I have a weed growing in my garden.
I think that's what's so cool about kind of garden potions that use forage materials, because it, again, and I talk about this all the time, but it makes us think about food in places that we don't normally think of it. It makes us think about weeds in a totally different way. It's just a really good perspective shift.
Exactly. And what about you, Dagny? What potions have you been making?
The first one's a tea. I load this one up because in July we were having this crazy heat wave. Nothing was cooling me down. I'm really sensitive to heat because of my autoimmune stuff too. So I was like, all right, the garden's got to fix me. I don't know. What can I put in? I Googled and I found every herb or flower that I grow that could be used to make a cooling tea. And I don't really understand the science of this. It must have something to do with your circulation and just being calming in general, because a lot of these fall under the category of things you would use for anxiety as well. So I picked some lavender, which the ultimate for anxiety. It actually also helps with headaches and digestion too. And lemon balm, which is so prolific. Like we have this one just growing wild everywhere. Chamomile is just a great go-to for any of those. It's also a really good herb for arthritis, which I just learned. And I'm also doing hibiscus in this tea, which every time I talk about it, people will say, I didn't know hibiscus was edible. I thought it was just roselle, but you can eat most forms of hibiscus. You just need to be careful with the hybrids because they haven't been tested necessarily. Mint goes into this one, which a lot of people will just use straight up for digestion, but it's so good for you in general. They also used borage, and calendula is another one I'd put at the top of the powerhouse herbs, right? Not only does it help with like healing and skin inflammation and everything, it can actually also help with cramps. It's antimicrobial. It's just a really good all around herb that's also really easy to grow. Like it grows wild. Once you plant it, you'll never have to plant it again. At least in my experience, it generally self-seeds, even though it's an annual, and will come up really early again the next year. So I steep all of that together. And because they're fresh, you'd usually have to steep it for a lot longer than you would steep like a tea that you get like in a tea bag from the store. So you could steep this all day. You could do it as a sun tea. I love to do a sun tea. Or you could even just, if you're worried about like the microbial activity of steeping something in the sun for 8 hours, which some people are, you can just stick it in the fridge overnight too. So that has been my go-to tea for the summer. I'm sure I'll have a very different warming tea option for the winter, but as things have been heating up, that has been what I've been turning towards. I've also been making a bunch of oregano oil because we always have so much oregano growing. It grows so easily and prolifically. Once you have it, you'll never not have it. And oregano oil is actually really a natural antibiotic. It has this thing called carvacrol in it. It's really high in antioxidants, and it heals and repels insects. I've also heard that it's good for SIBO, pain relief, psoriasis. And what I've actually used it for is ear infections. So I'm all for mixing your Western medicine in with your herbalism. And I did double check this, and I'm definitely not a doctor. So definitely don't do this without talking to a doctor. But I had an ear infection. I just put a couple drops of oregano oil in my ear for a week or two. And then I went to the doctor. I was like, I had this ear infection. Can you see it? And it was gone. So that was pretty cool to be able to treat it with something totally natural. And when I make the oregano oil, I usually fill the jar up about halfway. And then you want to cover that with some kind of neutral oil. I usually just use olive oil for this because it's culinary. And a lot of times you can just throw oregano oil in your culinary dishes too. But because I'm not using it for skincare, olive oil is fine to use. And I'll cover the herbs by at least an inch with that oil. And usually the herbs, because they're dry, they'll absorb some of it, and you'll have to add a little bit more oil later. And you just want to infuse that for about 6 weeks before you use it.
I'm not sure how you feel about it or if it's even true, but we both have autoimmune disorders. So oregano oil, I know is it stimulating to the immune system, or does it just support the immune system? Because I know that that's one thing that we have to worry about is we don't want to take anything that actually stimulates the immune system. That's why I don't know. I love elderberry. I love making elderberry syrup, but I'm also a little apprehensive about taking it because I have autoimmune disorders and I want to suppress my overactive immune system, but I don't know if oregano is the same way. if it's more just supportive.
To be honest, I don't know. I've never used it in quantities where I've felt the need to look that up. Typically, I'm using it like topically or just in really small amounts. So it's not something I've looked up, but that's a really good point. That's something we need to be keeping in mind. If you've got any kind of condition, like how it might be interacting with those conditions. Of course, everyone always says, like, if you're pregnant, especially, that's something you need to keep in mind. But autoimmune stuff is really complicated and tricky when it comes to utilizing a lot of the herbs that are most popular. And that is why I tend to stick to the more soothing ones, like the basics, like chamomile and calendula and lavender. I've just found that is a good one to have on hand for certain situations. But I think you're right. That's something I should look into because I do not know for sure.
Yeah,
Oregano
I
oil.
would think that if you used it topically, it wouldn't
Right.
matter. But I'm always like, I always want to try these things. And it seems counterintuitive because if you have an autoimmune disorder where your immune system is confused, you would think that you would want something that is good for your immune system. In actuality, we have overactive immune systems that hurt our organs when they're overactive, and we want them to not do that. So we actually need to suppress them instead of stimulating them. And so I want to try all these things. Like I used to make elderberry syrup all the time, but I talked to my doctor about it and she was like, actually, you don't need to be drinking elderberry syrup at all. And I was like, oh, that I guess makes sense. But I never thought about that before.
I know with elderberry, the concern is that I don't think I'm going to say this right, but the cytokine storm, where basically like your immune system goes into like hyper overdrive, and that can, I think that's been disproven. Again, not a scientist, not a doctor.
No, yeah. I'm not an expert. I was just
Mm-mm.
asking. I'm not an expert in any of that. If you
Yeah.
are, maybe drop in the comments if you are.
Help us.
Yeah.
If you're
We
an
don't know what we're talking about.
if you're an immunologist or a rheumatologist, let us know.
Like any herbs, any new food, anything like that. If you have a medical condition, if you're pregnant, if you've never had it before, just do a little bit of research before you try it. Don't just take everything on social media or something you heard from a friend and just do it. Do a little bit of research first.
It's tricky because
Yeah.
we don't want to scare people off. It can be so intimidating that you're like, fine, I just won't try anything. Personally, I do take elderberry syrup in a very small quantity, like a teaspoon every day over the winter months, or if I know I'm going to potentially be exposed to something. But it's interesting that you mentioned that because I think it applies to way more than herbs. Like I've also had this problem with stuff I grow in my garden that I've never eaten before, because this is the cool thing about gardening. We get to eat foods that maybe we would never get to try outside of our garden. This actually happened to me a couple of years ago with a pawpaw tree. I had never had a pawpaw before, and I ate them plain raw and they were fine. So I thought, oh my gosh, I have a huge overabundance of these. I'll freeze them, I'll puree them, and then I'll dehydrate them into a fruit leather later. Didn't even occur to me that certain plants, when you process them this way, can become toxic. So I made this fruit leather, I ate it, and then I started feeling really nauseous. And I Googled it, and it turned out like there were all these like very old HTML web pages that were like never ever freeze and dehydrate pawpaw. And how would you know that? Because this isn't I would never think that there's a fruit that I could eat raw and that I couldn't eat if it had been processed. I know with elderberry, we have to process it in order for it to be safe, but this was the opposite. And that had never occurred to me that cooking something could make it worse. Now I tell everyone, don't do that.
It's just impossible to know all that.
I never would have known that. And I guess this could be like our disclaimer. Yes, we're talking about herbs and we're talking about plants that are edible and whatnot, but make sure to do your research. I know one thing is a lot of people with high blood pressure don't know that they shouldn't drink mint tea either, because mint can raise your blood pressure. So always do your research. So
They are,
you
yeah.
need to research and see if it's right for you or not.
Speaking of mint, my third recipe is mint syrup. And basically, this is just something that I use to flavor different drinks like teas, cocktails. You could put ice cream or hot chocolate to have minty hot chocolate, which is one of my favorite treats in the winter. Or you can even just put it on like fresh berries or melon. I just picked a cantaloupe and I thought it would be so good to have a mint syrup to drizzle over the cantaloupe. But you can also use it to moisten like cake layers and have a minty flavor in your baked goods too.
That sounds good.
Ooh.
I usually just do 1 part water, 1 part sugar, and 1 part mint leaves and boil that for 30 seconds and then just let it cool and then strain off the leaves. And you have basically just a minty, simple syrup that you can use for all sorts of things.
I'm going to add that to my list for a cocktail party because I think that would also go good in cocktails, especially for the holidays. It's like minty. My brain is like churning. I'm thinking of the different
Yeah.
cocktails I can make with mint
You've
syrup.
already got so many ideas today.
I know.
I know. I feel like I've learned a lot. All right. Do you want to dive into your favorite plant, Meg?
If I had to recommend just an overall plant for anyone wanting to get into making their own things like we're talking about, I think calendula. I think overall it's just great. Like you can make a calendula salve. Like I said, it's an all-purpose cream. You can use it for so many different things. You can make it for tea, like Dagny was saying. You can also just make like calendula oil as well, just as a soothing body oil. It does best in the spring and fall. It's a cool weather type of flower. It doesn't really like the heat of the summer here in North Carolina anyway. The summer just decimates it. So I always grow it in spring and fall. And I treat it like a perennial here, even though it's not a perennial. It doesn't grow like from the same place every year, but I just let them go to seed at the end of the spring, and then they'll drop their seeds, and then they'll pop back up in the fall. Then again, they'll bloom, drop their seeds, and then pop back up next spring. They're also a really great companion plant as well. They are known to ward off other pests, almost like a marigold would. Actually, a nickname for calendula is pot marigold.
If you hadn't have said calendula, I would have said it, but I'm going to choose something different anyway. But yeah, I'm going to agree with you there, because not only is it so good for like all of the potions, and you can also eat it and put the petals in salads and stuff, and also the fact that it's a great companion plant and it's just amazing to have in the garden. But I'm also jealous that you get like 2 seasons out of it.
Yeah, it like I'll plant it in the spring, it'll die back in the summer, and then now it's coming back up. I'm like seeing new plants just because I left those in the spring. They went to seed. I scattered around the seeds, chaos gardened them, if you will. And now I'm seeing little baby plants pop up. So I should have some like a fall round of them. I don't know if it's just our climate, like how it, we have a really long growing season, so we can get away with that. How is it like growing for you?
For me, it definitely picks back up in the fall. So we do not really get it in the spring so much, but then as the season progresses, we get more and more. And so September is like calendula month for me. Then it will even go into October when things get pretty chilly at night here.
Yeah, that's so interesting because it's more prolific for spring for me. And it'll grow into, I think July was when it started dying because it just got too hot. It's crazy how our different it doesn't seem like we're that far away from each other, Dagny, but our climates are just totally different.
Worlds apart.
I feel like
know,
I'm
I
so much
know.
further away from both of you, but my climate's kind of like more similar maybe to Dagny.
Yeah, I'm finding that I put Pacific Beauty Calendula in this year, and it took forever to mature. Like it came up right away, but I didn't get any blooms off of it for 2 or 3 months.
That's interesting. It might be a variety thing. Speaking of variety, I did want to mention that the best variety, if you're using it medicinally for salves and things, the best variety is called Resina calendula. This variety has more resin because it's the resin in the flowers that is the actual medicinal part of the flower.
It is such a sticky plant.
It's really difficult to choose a favorite. I think I am tempted to say Cleavers or Sticky Willy. Speaking of sticky plants, just because everyone has them and everyone knows what it is, and like it's just so easy to make a tasty drink out of it. I love the fact that it surprised people when I made a video about it, and everyone's now, oh my god, this is actually really good. And it is, and it makes you feel good as well. But also, like, I'm a flavor girl. I grow things for flavor, and I am obsessed with lemon verbena. I talk about it all the time because it just tastes like sweeties. So that's just a really nice one to have for like teas and stuff. And you can mix it with all of your other different herbs to add like a lemony sweet flavor to everything. Just said 2, but yeah. What about you?
I just did a segment, a lemon verbena for my YouTube that's going up on Friday. And I'm literally just sitting there hugging it. I can't stop. Every time I walk by it, I have to hug it because it smells so good. I'm obsessed.
Yeah, that's definitely a touchy-feely. Every time I walk by it, I have to touch it and smell my fingers. I was just thinking about this the other day. Isn't it so weird how lemon it seems like it's the flavor that is most imitated in nature. Like we have lemon verbena, and I was smelling lemon verbena and like lemon. It just smells the exact same. And then we have lemon balm, we have lemon mint. There's just so many lemon things. I don't know.
Is it terpenes that are just very common in certain plants over others? I think there's just certain like chemical compounds that like have probably evolved to be in more plants because certain animals like them. If we like them so much, I can only imagine how much like hummingbirds
Or
like it,
maybe
for
it's like a
example.
repellent. Maybe the smell is supposed to repel pests because a lot of the lemony plants repel insects, don't they? So
Mhm.
that's what it's for.
Yeah, like lemon balm, I use that as like a mosquito repellent. It's very short-lived, but if I'm outside for just 10 minutes, I'll just rub some lemon balm on my ankles, especially my ankles, because the mosquitoes here in the South are bred different. But yeah, I don't know. It's just weird that there's just so many lemon things.
I agree. We need to explore this further. We need to understand the mystery of lemon.
Yeah, we should do a full episode on it.
Yeah.
Full lemon episode.
We'll do research and get back to everyone.
My favorite plant, I think, can also help with repelling bugs. Lavender, I'm pretty sure, works for bug repellent, and actually used to grow tons and tons of it. So we had, oh my gosh, like 40 lavender bushes, and we were cutting and drying it and selling like dried bouquets online for a really long time. And it just got to be too much work. But it's actually really easy to grow. A lot of people will see my lavender and be like, how did you get that to grow? I can never get it to overwinter. It doesn't do well for me. And I think the key is honestly that lavender seems to thrive on neglect in my experience. It's a Mediterranean plant. People, I think, are overwatering it. It really doesn't need a lot of water. I never water my lavender ever. The other thing that you need to keep in mind with lavender is that it needs to be pruned fairly consistently because it's a woody herb. So keeping on top of cutting that back, I usually cut it back at the end of June and I leave maybe 3 or 4 inches of growth because otherwise it just gets more and more dead. Like the stick part underneath just goes up and there's no new growth anymore. And sometimes when I've cut it back at that late June stage, I'll even get a second flowering off of it, which is really cool. But I do find it to be really easy to grow if you don't pay as much attention to it as you think you need to.
Yeah, I think that's true for mine too. When I first tried to grow lavender, I killed every single one of them because I was trying to water them every day. And that's absolutely not what you should do.
No, it needs the soil to dry out. And I also think a lot of people are trying to start it from seed, which I've never done. It's so hard. It's worth it to just get one plant and then propagate the stems. You can still get free plants out of it that way. It's just way less work. I don't know. Anyone who's been able to start it from seed, I applaud you. That is not me.
I think most of those woody perennials like lavender and rosemary, it's worth the investment to just find a pretty decent sized, started, healthy plant and go from there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And they're usually pretty cheap to buy. And I would also say they need drainage. They need so much drainage. As someone from a really damp climate, I would just dig in so much grit or gravel as much as you possibly can.
With both lavender and rosemary, I think also what gets people hung up is they're picking the wrong varieties. You need to be thinking about your winters and your cold climates, right? Like here, I have the best luck with Munstead lavender. I can't get English lavender to overwinter at all. Like it just doesn't stay for me. And I still haven't found a rosemary variety that overwinters well for me. I know there are types that are supposed to be more cold hardy, but so far I don't bring them inside, they don't survive. All right, my friends. Well, I hope this helps you prepare for spooky season. I know it's right around the corner. Meg's saying it's basically already here. It's September. It's time to get witchy, and I love getting witchy with you guys and learning from you both and all the amazing plants that you're growing and what you're doing with them. If you're not already, make sure that you're following us. We're all over the place. We're infiltrating the internet. So we're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts now. So make sure you're following us there so you don't miss any more episodes. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.